Can you hear me now?
Yes, we're hearing you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I want to thank Iksan and the executive for giving me this opportunity to interact with you today. I apologize I could not put the background out because I'm in an emergency mode traveling, and but I'm very honored that I could share some ideas with you. I want to share some slides quickly before the conversation starts with Wahid. So if you'll bear with me for a minute, let me see if I can share my screen with you. I put some slides together for this particular event so that I can put our discussion in context. 1 minute, it's not coming up. 1 minute, let me try this again. Sorry, I think my screen just went blank here.
Would the hosts put it on because the hosts have your presentation?
Okay, the host has it. He can.
Yes.
Right there.
No, yes, please.
Okay, I'll go straight to slide 1. I was asked to talk about the attaining the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, the role of the national, subnational, private sector, and community leaders. Let me put the Sustainable Development Goals in context. We have 17 goals. The world adopted these goals in 2015 as a successor to the Millennium Development Goals. What is different here is that the Millennium Development Goals had 8 goals. This one has 17, and it is the Millennium Development Goals were a compact for the North to help the poor Southern countries. The Sustainable Development Goals are different. They're broader. It is a compact amongst all nations to not only help to deal with poverty, hunger, health issues, education, and others around the world, but also to deal with these issues of energy transition, climate change, sustainability, but also good governance. These are elements that were included. So indeed, it was broadened to 17 goals. I was directly involved in goal 7, in developing it, in mobilizing the world to have a goal on energy, access to universal access to affordable, reliable, sustainable energy for all. I was also directly involved. I did that in my role as chair of UN Energy and special representative of the Secretary General for Sustainable Energy for All. But I wore another hat. My other hat was that I was Director General of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. So I laid the foundation for goal number 9, which is dealing with promoting industrialization, innovation, and infrastructure development. When you look at all these goals, especially goal 1, dealing with poverty, goal 2, dealing with hunger, goal 3, dealing with health, education number 4, gender number 5, and clean water number 6, none of those can be achieved without access to affordable, reliable energy. Just think about it. In the 21st century, nothing can run without energy. We just saw that in the case of COVID, that to deliver the vaccines, you needed cold chains. You needed to store those vaccines, to do diagnosis, advanced diagnosis, to support people in the ICU units. You need power. Education, same. But in fact, to supply water to cities, clean water and sanitation cannot be achieved without sustainable energy. The same happens to dealing with hunger. Agricultural production requires power. Processing requires power, storage, distribution, marketing. Similar issue happens with a lot of the other goals below 7. Dealing with industrialization, dealing with job creation, dealing with issues of climate change. Those cannot be solved without dealing with energy. So I had to lead the world as chairman of UN Energy and special rep for energy to mobilize the world to get a goal 7. I'll spend a lot of time on 7 because it matters for Nigeria. Also, next slide, please. When we adopted these goals in 2015, in September, by November, December, we had to meet in Paris under the climate change negotiations for the world to adopt what we call the Paris Accord. an effort by all nations to keep temperature rise below 2 degrees, preferably to keep temperature rise to 1.5, not more than 1.5 degrees. I need to bring these two into context because we can't achieve the Sustainable Development Goals without also dealing with the biggest risk multiplier, the biggest risk to the planet, which is climate change. This picture I show you, I serve on the board of the Rocky Mountain Institute in the United States, which is one of the leading think tanks for dealing with climate science, but also climate economics. What you see on the left-hand side are the main sources of greenhouse gas emissions. Energy contributes over 41%. So you can't solve climate change without dealing with how we produce energy. But transport is number 2. Buildings, heating and cooling of buildings, use of energy in industry, and so on, agriculture, fisheries. You see that the big causes of emissions will be power generation, transport, and of course, industry. On the right-hand side, what you see is some of the main fuels that cause more of the emissions: coal, gas, and oil. Why is this relevant for our conversation? Nigeria is an economy that depends highly on oil export. 94% of your exports earnings is from oil. 57% of all government earnings is from your oil sector. So climate policy that will affect how much oil is demanded will affect the whole economy of Nigeria. It will directly affect your ability, whether central government or regional governments or city mayors, how you achieve those sustainable development goals, because it's going to affect your revenue. And I'll talk about that a little bit. Next slide, please. So we must discuss achievement of sustainable development goals within the context of climate change, but more importantly, within the context of energy transitions. The biggest debate globally is about energy transitions. At the UN and at COP26 in Glasgow in December, I was there myself advocating on behalf of Africa. Most developing countries insist on what we call an inclusive and just transition. A global climate, a global energy transition that will ensure that our countries can achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, which we call the 2030 Agenda. We also want to make sure that in achieving energy transitions and solving climate change, the 700 million people around the world that have no access to electricity will be connected, and over 600 million of those are in Africa. 85 million of them are in Nigeria. We want to make sure that in this transition, no one is left behind. Or if you take your country, if we're talking about climate resilience and green economy, we want to make sure that those who are employed in your oil sector will still have gainful employment. So we talk about an inclusive and just transition that will ensure prosperity for all, but at the same time save the planet. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. The context of Africa and Nigeria is important when we talk about energy access. Energy runs everything: our computers, our transportation systems, our industry. So access to energy is crucial. In Africa today, 900 million of our people do not have access to what we call modern energy cooking services, MECS. Even in your country, over 80% of the people use charcoal and firewood for cooking. 600 million Africans do not have access to electricity. I try to put together for you 5 elements that will drive global change, but particularly relevant to Nigeria. How we deal with these 5 mega trends will determine also how we achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, but particularly how we'll make prosperity spread. Number 1 is demographics. Africa is in a situation where in a very short period, we'll be adding another 1 billion Africans to our population. By 2050, our population will be over 2 billion. In the case of Nigeria, your estimate is now you're about 216 million. Estimates show that you will be about 400 million by 2050. How do you deal with that population? How do you get jobs? How do you get water and sanitation to those people? How do you feed them? Is a big question. And to do that, you need all arms of government, federal, state, local government, but also particularly the private sector to promote growth and wealth creation. Economic growth. The African economy is expected to quadruple by 2040. I saw some very interesting projections for Nigeria. Some project, PricewaterhouseCoopers, for example, that the Nigerian economy will be amongst the 10 biggest economies in the world by 2050, bigger than UK and France. In fact, some estimate that it will be 6 trillion. But it is not guaranteed. This is a projection that it could happen. This could only happen if you diversify the economy, if your power systems run. Today, in Nigeria, right now, you can only supply a little over 4,000 megawatts. This is a disgrace. It's a big disgrace. You have an installed capacity of about 12,000 megawatts, but you can only supply about 4. Projections show that you could even provide as much as 16 gigawatts, but a lot of constraints. And without reliable, affordable power, you can run your economy or your industries. Urbanization, you have to watch this. You have to watch this. Africa has some of the highest, please go back to that slide. Africa has some of the highest urbanization rates ever seen in the world. In fact, our urbanization rate right now is higher than what China experienced during its 2 decades of expansion. If you take you in Nigeria, by 2050, another 190 million Nigerians will move into cities. Think about it. Where are the jobs? How do you provide sewage control? How do you provide clean water, sanitation, manage garbage, but also importantly, house them and create jobs? An example is Lagos. Some project that Lagos will be probably the largest city by 2100. Of course, Wahid, myself, and you are gone, but our children and grandchildren will be around. Lagos is projected to be about 85 to 100 million. Where are the facilities to manage that? Today are 20 million people in Lagos. You're still struggling. In fact, that growth has been so massive and it is still expanding. Finally, transport. Transport is crucial for oil demand around the world, but also particularly because in Africa, demand for vehicles is growing. Look at some of the projections for Nigeria. Today, they say, some studies report that you have about 36 million vehicles. Okay, by 2040, that is going to go to about 66 million. By 2050, 76 million. But why did I put this up? It is because countries are now putting policies in place to ban the use of fossil vehicles by 2030, in the case of Germany, Norway by 2025. But in fact, the European Union and others, Japan, China, they're all moving towards electric vehicles. For you in Nigeria, projections show that if the world strictly implements what we call net zero strategies to keep climate change temperature rise to about 1.5 degrees, there will be a reduction in oil demand of about 25 million barrels a day. Think about it. How do you finance your growth? This is more reason why you must diversify, and therefore achieving the Sustainable Development Goals will depend greatly on what you do in your energy space, taking advantage of that natural resource to diversify your economy. Thank you very much, Wahid. That was the introduction I wanted to give to put in context what we're going to be discussing. Over to you, sir.
Okay. No, the comment on Ransom Kuti just made me remember that you have already some foundation that, again, with collaboration with South Africa, with India or Brazil, you can have the cooperation to be able to be one of the producers of vaccines for Africa. The other comments I saw, somebody asked the question, does culture affect our governance and our how we behave or how we deal with these issues? Well, culture matters, and we have some African values that we have to elevate again. You and I know that in the villages, in our time when we were kids, you work hard. The whole discipline of hard work, some of us imbibed coming in from the villages. Somehow with modernization, I guess we've just pushed that aside. Corruption and quick wealth has now replaced hard work, the value of hard work. Second, a positive aspect of our culture, especially for West Africa, is that if you go to the markets, the women dominate. Our women are natural business people. I've looked at gender issues in agriculture, gender issues in entrepreneurship and SMEs. Go look at those markets. In fact, for a number of crops in Nigeria, 80% of the processing, food processing, is done by women. But they do that with their hands, or they do it with firewood and charcoal. No, technologies and other solutions that can enhance their productivity will be important. So that aspect of our culture, natural entrepreneurship of our women, has to be leveraged. I guess one cultural aspect that is troublesome, and this I'm getting into hot water here, is the fear of accountability. Our culture makes us so subservient that we can question. We have to play along. Now, that is something we have to reflect on. And as you remember, all along I said, if we don't have enough accountability, we will not be able to achieve the SDGs. Over to you, sir. So I saw those two comments.
Yes.
That's what I should comment.
Thank you very much. Can we have a goodwill from the Sierra Leone High Commission in Nigeria, please? The Sierra Leone High Commission, can you please come on?
Moderator, sir, I don't think they are on the call anymore. So I don't think they're on the call. I will try to I'll look out for them. I haven't seen.
Okay. That was a good one from Freetown we had. And it was a natural transition. Dr. Yim Keller was talking about the role of women in Rwanda. And we had a woman from the mayor's office in Sierra Leone who gave a very good account of African women. And I'm sure you all must be proud of this as the registrar is concerned, and the vice president, and of course, my chair. She did a very good job. So can we go to the next item on the